information shared on Girl Pray On It is for educational and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Although I am a licensed mental health counselor, I'm not your therapist. Unless, of course, you're one of my clients. In that case, I am your therapist, and I'll see you in our next session. Listening to this podcast does not create a therapeutic relationship between us. If you are experiencing emotional distress or a mental health crisis, please seek support from a licensed mental health provider in your area or contact a crisis line. Always pray on it, and also reach out when you need help.
But not to us.
Welcome back to another episode of Why My Life Sucks.
What?
Just kidding! It's Girl Pray On It. How are you today?
Good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm good, alhamdulillah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Let's just get straight into it, right?
Sure. Oh my God. I have a would you rather question that I invented like 5 years ago
Okay.
that literally sent ripples through the family.
Really? Your family?
Yeah, it caused
Oh,
like
Lord.
great divide. Everyone was very mixed on their responses to it, and I feel like it could break the internet.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, let's
So it's
break
a
it.
big one.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay.
Okay. The question is, would you rather have claws or have a tail?
What?
Yeah.
Would I rather have claws or have a tail? Now, okay, are the claws retractable?
I knew this was going to come. So many questions. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
The claws are retractable.
Okay.
The tail is not retractable.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
How many tails are retractable?
Well, obviously this situation is not real. Humans cannot have claws or a tail.
Okay.
So
Right. Okay,
we have to
so
suspend reality a little bit here.
okay, is the tail, is it strong enough to hold my body weight like a monkey?
Yes.
Okay, then definitely a tail.
Really?
Definitely a tail. Because do you know how like agile monkeys are? Monkeys are like crazy agile. Like they're crazy.
Yeah.
Like what else are you gonna do with claws but F somebody up? Like that's really all you can do, right? With a tail, you're moving. You're moving and you're grabbing things.
Yeah.
And it's basically like having a third arm and you're super balanced
Sure.
and you're moving and you're swinging. And that seems really fun to me.
Totally. And I said the same thing.
Yeah.
And I was like on that same page.
Uh-huh.
But a very interesting, like from a psychological perspective, I think it's very interesting what the responses have been. Okay.
Oh no.
Majority of women have said claws.
Really?
Majority of men have said tail.
Oh wow. Am I a man? God. That would really suck. Yeah, that would be really that would really suck because the thing I don't want to be associated with is men. Like I don't want to be associated with a man.
Okay.
And I understand why more women would choose claws for like safety purposes.
Exactly.
And I would also choose, that was my initial thought.
Yes.
But then I was thinking like what my practicality. Here's the thing. For those of you guys who don't know me in real life, I am 5'11". I'm a 5'11" black woman and 200 plus pounds. Like, men are scared of me, okay? That's just the reality that I live within. And no one's trying to like kidnap me. No one's trying to hurt me, usually, alhamdulillah, right? So I feel pretty secure in my body.
Sure.
But I could understand why other women would want claws to protect themselves. Now, what would you say?
So I have the opposite problem. People don't usually expect me to say this, but I'm actually 5'1". So I'm really short.
Yeah.
People would think of me that I would fit the demographic of what a lot of victims of assault, just in terms of being a little bit smaller. And I think initially I chose tail for all the reasons that you listed, thought it was really cool. And as I've gotten older, I think maybe I am leaning a little bit toward claws just because how amazing would it be to feel like you really do have the weapon on you at all times as an element of protection that is attached to your body. I think that's why majority of women have chosen that.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. And how sad is it that women automatically go to defending themselves and trying to protect their boundaries when they're being violated? I think that's so... That just tells us a lot about society, right? Like that women want to have something that's so readily accessible to them to be able to defend themselves.
I think you bring up a good point, which is about how there is this need for
Mhm.
protecting ourselves,
Mhm.
both physically but also emotionally and mentally. And
Mhm.
so that
Mhm.
brings us to today's topic, which is
There's boundaries,
boundaries.
boundaries,
Yes,
yeah.
girl.
Yeah, emotional boundaries, physical boundaries, all of the boundaries
Yep.
that you need, Islamic boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. Let's first start with what is a boundary? You, as a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
probably talk a lot with your clients about boundaries and setting boundaries with the people in their lives. How would you define it from a clinical standpoint? And then maybe we can talk about how we might define it personally for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. A boundary is, you can take it quite literally. It's a line that you're drawing that you need to enforce people not to cross.
Mm-hmm.
And this can take so many forms. A boundary can be something as simple as people need to take their shoes off when they come into my home.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Especially in New York. If you don't take your shoes off at your door, you're disgusting. And I'm never eating at your house. And you should be ashamed. Continue.
You have some strong thoughts about taking your shoes off.
I mean, everybody should. Okay,
Yeah.
so here's the thing. I have met families, Arab families,
Mm-hmm.
that don't take their shoes off,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm appalled.
Yeah.
I'm appalled. I'm appalled. They're Muslims. Like,
Yeah.
what I was taught from my mom was
Mm-hmm.
that you should be able to pray at any place in your house outside of like the door and bathroom. So that, and then also just cleanliness. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I could talk for days about taking your shoes off. It's just disgusting to me that, like, especially in the city of New York, you're walking where there's literal human, dog, rat, every single thing, right? Type of feces on the ground, piss, throw up. I mean, the list goes on.
This does indeed go on.
It's just disgusting.
Yeah.
Sorry. And that was an aside. Boundaries, please
Yeah.
continue.
We're adding in a segment here of
Right.
Ayesha rants, but you're absolutely right. So that is an example of a boundary, which
Mhm.
is expecting that your guests take their shoes off when they enter in your home. And
Mhm.
enforcing that boundary looks like asking people to take their shoes off when they
Mhm.
enter into your home. And it can be something as small as that. And then it can obviously be something quite bigger, which is setting boundaries with your family, with your spouse,
Mhm.
with your in-laws,
Mhm.
with your siblings, your parents,
Mhm. With yourself.
with yourself. I like
Mhm.
that for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
That's kind of what the definition of boundaries would be. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I would agree with everything that you said. And boundaries are less about other people and more about your response when those boundaries are crossed. So being able to acknowledge or identify what you want to be a boundary is really important, but your response to when those boundaries are crossed is equally as important because that's what actually makes a boundary a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
From what I've heard on the TikToks and on Instagrams and all of that great stuff, is that boundaries don't work unless you enforce them,
Yeah.
right? It's super important that when they are crossed, you have a real conversation with that person and you allow them to choose whether or not they're going to respect that boundary or whether or not they're maybe not going to be in your lives, right? Yeah. Oh, speaking about boundaries, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you distinguish between setting a boundary and just kind of being mean or selfish?
I think that's a huge misconception that people have, that setting a boundary is mean
Mhm.
or that you can't set a boundary nicely. I
Mhm.
think you can absolutely set a boundary in a kind way. And I don't think that it has to be mean either. I think that people may have a difficult time accepting your boundary,
Mm.
which may cause feelings of guilt for you,
Mhm.
which is totally normal. And it's
Mhm.
okay to have those feelings. But that doesn't mean that's reality, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that because you set that boundary, you're being mean or that you're being unkind. I think there's still a lot of importance in setting the boundary in a nice way, in a way that is somebody can receive from
Mhm.
you. And I think another point to make is that people may not necessarily accept the boundary on the first go of it. I think another thing that we have to do is be really patient with the people we're setting the boundary with.
Consistency and repetition.
Yes,
Repetition.
consistency, because
Yeah.
we are only human beings, we're forgetful. And so it's important to continue to establish that boundary.
Mhm.
in a kind way.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. And in the teaching world and probably in the professional world, there's this saying that nice is not always kind and kind is not always nice,
Mm,
but clarity is always kind.
mm,
And I think for, especially as women, we want to be nice, we want to be seen as nice, whereas like nicety sometimes involves allowing other people to betray your boundaries and overstep your boundaries, whereas kindness, it is kind to be clear, is kind to clearly set your boundaries and establish your boundaries with another person and tell them like
mhm.
this is what I am okay with and this is not what I am okay with. And that clarity is actually kind to that person. And I think that's something that we as women need to establish, that our role is not to be nice to everyone, but our goal is to be kind to everyone. And that clarity helps us to continue that kindness.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I think going back to the example that we listed in the beginning of taking your shoes off, right? There's a huge
Mhm.
difference between saying, "Take your damn shoes off.
Right. Yeah.
How
Like,
dare you enter
yeah.
my house with those dirty shoes?"
Right.
There's a
Yeah.
difference between that and saying, "Would you mind please taking your shoes off?" We're
Right.
actually a
Shoes off.
shoeless, yeah,
Yeah.
shoes
Shoes
off
off household,
household.
right?
Yeah.
And even, I don't know what the word is, but I guess accommodations end up being the compromise, right? So, like in a shoes off household, you might have slippers next to the door or extra pair of
Oh,
socks
yeah.
to accommodate for other people to feel more comfortable. Even I have people doing maintenance at my house. I have shoe covers that I give them
Oh, that's so smart.
so that they don't have to take off their boots, but they can still come
Yeah.
in. And I guess I'm wondering, what does accommodations look like or compromises look like in boundaries? Are there compromises and boundaries? Do those exist? Or is it about maintaining firm boundaries?
Maintaining firm boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe when it comes to the boundary, I don't think that there needs to be a compromise,
Mm-hmm.
but it also may depend on what that boundary is. And maybe it would be helpful to be more specific, where I think if we can come up with a boundary that is a little bit more violating,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps it's family commenting on your weight.
Mm-hmm. Don't
That,
do that.
yeah,
Don't do that.
I
Yeah.
think that can be quite a big one in this community
Mm.
where people will make comments of, "Oh, it looks like you gained a little bit of weight," or even it looks like you lost a lot of weight, and how that can have such a damaging impact on self-esteem and body image.
Mhm.
It's just don't talk about weight. Don't
Yeah.
don't comment about weight.
Let's not talk about people's bodies,
Yes,
right? Yeah, right?
exactly. Let's not do it. And I think it can be really, really challenging to say that in a lot of our communities where, for example, there's a lot of respect given to elders and this element
Mhm.
of you're not allowed to talk back. I
Mhm.
think this is kind of bringing up that concept of setting boundaries nicely, but also that you don't have to compromise your boundaries just because society is telling you over and over and over
Mm.
again that you should just take mistreatment or accept mistreatment in some sort
Right.
of way.
Especially from like elders in the community.
Right.
Like that's a really big one. I think something that a lot of people struggle with is being able to maintain boundaries. It's easier to maintain boundaries with someone who's younger than you or
Right.
maybe a subordinate, but when
Yeah.
you're trying to establish boundaries with people who are older than you
Right.
or have a higher position of authority than you,
Right.
that can be really really difficult. One of the ways that I like to not even establish a boundary is it's more of just giving people time to think about whether or not that's the territory they want to enter into by repeating the question back to them, right? Like, oh, you've gained weight. Oh, it's funny that you should notice that I that you think I gained weight. Why do you notice that? Why are you making why are you saying that? I think stating what they or restating what they have said to you and then asking them, why did you bring that up? Or why is that on your mind? Gives them a chance to reflect on whether or not that's something that they actually want to share and a boundary that they want to cross, and can hopefully maybe give them a moment to reevaluate what the priorities are. Something that I just like to do. But I like to call people out. So I'm working on doing that in a way that's kind
Mhm.
and not mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me personally, I think I've always struggled with boundaries because of exactly what you had mentioned before. And what I mean by that is how women are often socialized to be nice, to be soft spoken, to not say anything that might hurt or disrupt the status quo in
Right.
some sort of way. And I think I've always felt that quite strongly. I am a self-diagnosed people pleaser,
I
quite
know it.
difficult. So I think it's something that I am definitely still working on. But that's where I have to keep reminding myself that setting boundaries is being kind to me, is being respectful to me. And so
Definitely.
when it does come to comments about weight, I do think that there's a way that you can nicely say, it makes me a bit uncomfortable when to talk about my weight, and I would prefer in the future if you didn't mention it.
Yeah. And it's up to that other person to receive that and to sit with it and to sit with the uncomfortability of that moment and to reassess why they felt the need to bring up that topic or say that thing that a lot of us would normally be like, what, why are you saying that?
So, we've talked a little bit about setting boundaries, doing it in a kind way, that boundary setting doesn't necessarily mean that you are being unkind or selfish. We touched briefly on this other element, but let's talk a little bit more about why so many women, especially in our community, struggle with guilt when asserting their boundaries.
Yeah. I think the guilt is from that feeling of discomfort of having allowed your boundaries to be crossed so many times. That is what has now felt the norm and felt the most comfortable. And then it begins to feel uncomfortable when you're actually taking back some of that power and you're saying, actually, I would like to reestablish these boundaries and this is what I would like to see happen. And that's, I think, where a lot of the guilt comes from, is from that uncomfortability of having to reestablish what is okay and what's not, right? And I think a lot of guilt also comes from the fact that a lot of people don't want to be just seem disrespectful or unkind or not nice. And unfortunately, especially within the Muslim community, our we have a lot of cultures that are steeped in being quiet and doing what the elder or what a man says, right? It's not in all cultures, right? But they're particularly in the Muslim culture, right? You listen when your elders tell you to do something, you do what they say, right? We know that as Muslims, if something is wrong, we are supposed to say something, not in an unkind way, but we have a responsibility to correct poor behavior and things that are just flat out not right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I think certainly there's this element of there being a power dynamic, first of all, between younger and elder generations, and also between men and women, and there being a fear of disrupting that sort of status quo for how that will look to the community. And surely I think that does come with a lot of guilt. I think there's also this element of how our religion emphasizes respecting parents. So I think we should talk about that. And there's no doubt about it, parents are given the utmost respect in our religion. They raised us when we were babies, they took care of us. There's no doubt about that. But I think we can all agree that respect is something that's earned, and that there's a lot of ways in which this newer generation, the younger generations, are saying we no longer will accept mistreatment just because you're my parent. So I think when we're raised with this element of you respect your parents no matter what, that you obey your parents no matter what, even when what they're asking for is hurtful or
Full.
harmful,
Right.
this is going to automatically instill a sense of guilt and fear of what happens if I tell my parents that I'm not okay with what they're saying or how they're treating me.
Right.
So I think that the power dynamic in our communities where the elders have this element of power and the parents have this element of power can make it really, really difficult for us to set those boundaries. And I do want to point out that guilt is a very normal reaction,
Mhm.
and it's okay to feel guilt.
Mhm.
I think one thing that I've learned from this wonderful book that we can maybe link, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. What I've learned from that book is that you may not be able to eliminate that guilt. The guilt is natural, the guilt is normal.
Mhm.
All feelings are okay. Guilt is a very powerful emotion.
Mhm.
And so to think that you'll get to a point where you won't experience guilt is not necessarily
Realistic. Yeah.
realistic, but that can we sit with the feeling of guilt?
Yeah.
Can you allow yourself to feel that guilt and not let that guilt dictate your actions when it comes to setting boundaries?
Yeah, that's really important. Well, earlier I talked about the Muslim community and the expectation of younger people to listen to their elders, and perhaps in some communities for women to listen to men. And then you mentioned the importance of respecting your parents. What cultural and religious messaging has shaped your early understanding or misunderstanding about boundaries?
Yeah. Well, I'm quite lucky in that I grew up with parents who are very open minded in having conversations about boundaries,
Mhm.
and that I always felt that my feelings were respected. But I know a lot of people I've worked with in the past have not grown up with that.
Mhm.
And there being that element of setting a boundary is unacceptable in their
Mhm.
household.
Mhm.
The boundary is ignored. The
Mhm.
cultural element of what the parent says goes, and there's no negotiation or conversation in a very authoritative kind of way. And as I mentioned earlier, there is this sort of fear instilled of I have to respect my parents or I'm going against Islam and I'm being wrong and
Mhm.
sinful. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about before, in which there's a very healthy, respectful way of
Mhm.
disagreeing with your parents or sharing your thoughts and feelings with your parents that's not mean.
Do you have any juicy stories or things, or perhaps a scenario that is common amongst your patients around boundary setting?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we mentioned parents before, and I
Mhm.
think that's a really big one. I think one thing I see a lot is adult children living at home with parents and how difficult it can be without having boundaries in that
Mhm.
scenario. So a lot
Mhm.
of it is children feeling like their privacy is not being respected.
Mm.
And to go a step further, I think I've seen a lot where parents want to be super involved in their adult children finding a spouse or getting married. And so I have seen, if you can believe it,
Mhm.
specifically moms
Mm.
wanting to act on behalf of their child on a dating app. So essentially, like catfishing, like putting their child's profile on a dating app and then being
That's so
like acting
weird.
as their child.
That's so weird.
And that is a really important place in which boundaries need to be put in
Mhm.
that particular scenario.
Yeah.
And so I've seen the adult child of that parent have to set the boundary of, I'm not ready to get married right now. I'm not
Mhm.
interested in getting married right now. I really want to end this conversation about marriage. And
Mm.
I think when it does come to setting boundaries, especially when it's with your parents and
Mhm.
especially with parents who are of the mindset of, I'm just trying to help. It's
Mhm.
so important to lead with love and to
Yeah.
lead with, I love you so much. I
Mhm.
respect you so much. This is just one thing in which I really need some space here. And your opinion means so much to me, but I'm going to try to find a spouse on my own when the time is right.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
will take you with me on that journey in a way that I feel is respectful to my boundaries and where we can both feel like we are involved.
Yeah.
So that's a big one that I see.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of parents end up wanting their kid to follow a certain timeline, and they see other people's kids who are getting married and they want the same thing, but they don't realize that it's very individual and that they need to
Mhm.
allow their child to be their own person and their own adult, and what that looks like can vary from person to person. One thing that I heard you speak about earlier was about privacy, and that made me think about like my own cultural upbringing around boundaries and privacies. I think
Mhm.
for a lot of Black Americans, there's this idea of there's no privacy in my house. If I pay the bills, there's
Right.
no closed doors,
Right.
there's no hiding what you want to do, there's no what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine too, and we're going
Right.
to share everything. And I think that ends up being hard for particularly like Black children to be like able to establish boundaries when they grow up.
Mhm.
And then in the religious community, the idea that like you should obey your parents, but even that has stipulations in terms of if your parents are advising you to do something that's haram, you
Mhm.
shouldn't be following them. And if they're abusive, right, you should be holding
Yes.
firm boundaries. It is totally okay for you to say to an abusive person, whether that's your parent, a partner, et cetera, these are my boundaries and you can either follow them or you can not be in my life. And I know so many people in the community have had to deal with that only to be met with, well, you can't cut the ties of your blood, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there is a certain extent where you can do that, right? When your boundaries are violated, especially physical boundaries, right? Where you're physically being abused or mentally being abused or financially being abused. There are cases in which you can choose to remove that person from your life as another boundary of protection. And that doesn't necessarily, we're not scholars, right? So we can't give
Mhm.
fatwa, but I think it's important for people to know that abuse is abuse and you don't have to accept it. And just because in Islam you're not supposed to cut ties of blood does not mean you should accept abuse.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. I think
yeah,
that's a very important point to mention.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I think there's also ways of setting really, really strict boundaries as well without cutting people out of your life,
Mm-hmm.
which can be I'm going to continue to maybe have a relationship with you over the phone, but I will
Mm-hmm.
not be seeing you in person. So that's a way in which you're establishing a physical boundary with someone. And of course, I'm talking in very extreme situations.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, every situation is going to vary from person to person. But I think for people who are worried about this idea of cutting family ties, especially in cases of physical abuse or sexual abuse, having
Mm-hmm.
physical distance is essential. I think boundary setting is really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it gets easier with age and maturity. I'm not sure how you
Mm-hmm.
feel, but oh my gosh, I go back in my head to when I was 17 years old and feel so sad and sorry for that little girl who didn't know how to stand up for herself or set
Mm-hmm.
boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now that I've reached more maturity and now that I'm in a place in my life where I have more life experience, I think I'm feeling a lot more comfortable speaking out when I feel I'm being mistreated or someone is
Mm-hmm.
speaking to me
Mm-hmm.
in a very disrespectful way. I think that with maturity and life experience comes a little bit of ease, especially when you have children,
Yep.
because now you're no longer just looking out for yourself, but now you're looking out for your child
Mm-hmm.
too. And so I do want to say for people out there who are struggling with boundaries and boundary setting, just know that it's something you can work on. It's gets easier the more you practice it, and it gets easier with time.
Yeah, 100%. So I think this is a good chance to shift gears to our listener letters.
Let's do it. Tea and
Okay.
tawakkul,
Okay.
girl.
Tea and tawakkul.
Yes.
So grab your tea. I mean, we have water. I have an empty cup of water, but this is the time where we sip some tea. We
Yes.
read some tea from our letters, and we tell you to have tawakkul in Allah. Also, give our opinions about certain scenarios that you guys write to us about.
Yes, love.
If you'd like to be featured on the podcast and you'd like to ask us a question about a certain scenario that you happen to be in, we might just read it on the podcast and you can send those letters to girlprayonitpod@gmail.com. Again, that's girlprayonitpod@gmail.com. Do you want to read it?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right. So we have actually, this is pretty rare, but we have a listener letter, some tea,
Okay,
actually from a man
from a
this
man.
time. So let's see what he has
Okay.
to say. Okay, the subject of this request or this letter
Mhm.
is, were my boundaries unreasonable?
Probably. But go ahead.
Okay. I'm a 25-year-old male. I was talking to a potential, and everything was super perfect until this conversation. She mentioned that most of her friends are married, and she goes to their house to hang out. And while she's there, the husband is always around too. And she often has their husbands on her close Instagram stories. She posts daily, apparently, and they all love watching it as she's super, quote, funny,
Mm.
unquote.
Mhm.
I said this made me uncomfortable, and I don't think this is something I would expect of a partner. Apparently, this was a deal breaker to her. LOL.
Okay.
Oh well, I guess I move on to the next one. This girl.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. This girl is a hijabi, and she prays 5 times a day, apparently. So,
Mhm.
do I have unreasonable boundaries? Please let me know so I feel less bad, as I really saw something real with her and already mentioned her to my mom.
Your fault for mentioning it to your parents. But let's start off with that's not a boundary, right? A boundary is something that you establish for yourself, right? And someone can either choose to abide by it or not. And you're saying that what did he say that was a boundary for her or this is a boundary for him?
This is a boundary for him.
It is? It's a boundary for him?
I think what I'm getting from this is his boundary is that he doesn't want her to
Mhm.
have interaction with her friends' husbands, and she
Okay.
doesn't want her friends' husbands following her close stories on Instagram, and that's what his boundaries are.
Okay. I mean, I get it. Like, it can be uncomfortable if you don't want the opposite sex, like, viewing your close friends. What is she really posting that you're so insecure about? I'm interested to hear what you think.
So, a couple of things are standing out to me about this message,
Mhm.
which is obviously it's giving a bit insecure.
Oh, yeah.
So, I want you to really reflect on that.
Mhm.
And I think what I mean by that is that it sounds like you had one conversation about it and now you're ready to end this
Discard
relationship
her. Yeah.
just because you're like feeling like you don't want her interacting with her friends' husbands.
Right.
And I understand maybe that this is maybe coming from a difference of religiosity where
Mhm.
maybe you feel that you're at a level where you don't want the two genders to interact and maybe she's a little bit more flexible on that.
Mhm.
But I think what I'm getting from this message is especially, oh well, it's on to the next one.
Right.
It's, I mean, that's
Clearly, she
quite
wasn't the
rude.
one for you, right? Like, this should be something that you can work out with her. This should be something
Yes.
that you could talk about
Yes.
and establish those boundaries for a potential marriage, right? I actually agree with his point of view. I just don't agree with how he's willing to quickly discard her and move on. If the roles were reversed, I would not want a whole bunch of women following my husband,
Mhm.
commenting and things of that nature without me being there, right? Like if we're in a group setting, I'm fine with that. Whether or not you think that's okay, I really don't care. We're not here to talk about that. But I wouldn't want a whole bunch of people following my husband on a close friends page. That would be that would be weird to me, and I understand that from a religious standpoint. But if she's not willing to change, then I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Yeah. So I guess everyone's interpretation of the boundaries between genders is
Mhm.
going to be different. And if he is feeling uncomfortable about her interacting with her friends' husbands, that is understandable.
Mhm.
But I think that there's a difference between, like, this is making me uncomfortable. Can we have a conversation about it? And see what we can like, how we can work it out,
Mhm.
especially that he mentioned she was perfect besides
Right.
this, and he's already mentioned her to her mom. It sounds like it
To his
was
mom.
sorry, he
Yeah.
mentioned her to his mom. It sounds like
Right.
it was quite serious,
Right.
and that this is the issue that's going to make or break it is quite interesting, and I want
Mhm.
him to reflect on that. And I also, I think, want him to reflect on, like you said, that element of on to the next one.
Right.
I'm wondering how many ones have there been when I hear that statement, and it's quite interesting that he's
Right.
having such a strong reaction to
Right.
her having an interaction with her friends' husbands, and yet
At
he
his house, by the way,
yeah,
because do you expect for them to just not be in their own house? That seems unreasonable, right? If she's
yeah,
visiting her friend, she's not there to hang out with her husband. She's there to hang out with her friend.
and her husband happens to be
Happens to
there.
be there, right? So that's a I feel like that's a non-issue, right?
Mm,
The following on stories is it's entering a gray zone. I get it. But everything else feels I feel like you might not be ready for marriage.
mm.
I don't I don't know.
Could be.
Could be.
Could be. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'm just noticing a little bit of the disconnect between him talking about women as though they're disposable, that he's sort of on to the next one,
Mhm.
and yet having some sort of feelings and judgments about her interaction with men who
Right.
are already married, and
Right.
we don't know the extent of which there are already boundaries.
Right. Within
Um,
their own marriage. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a lot of questions that are gonna come with this, but I think, like, it sounds like we're both having a reaction to, like, the wording of this
Mhm.
particular letter is the thing that was a bit triggering.
Yeah, I mean, the wording gives off juvenile to me, which is why I say I don't feel like you are ready for marriage. I could be wrong. Maybe there's more in this story that you have not there are some gaps and some holes in the story that I feel like need to be filled out for me to be able to make an assessment, but offhand, it seems like this is what? This is less of this is on to the next one, right? On to the next one. I don't know. It doesn't it's not giving boundaries for boundaries' sake. It's giving controlling for controlling sake, but that could just be me. I think any partner should communicate about what's appropriate, especially in a social media age.
Mhm.
I could understand that. I understand if the roles were reversed, that would make me feel weird too. If there were people following my husband who were women, however, I'd feel less so about it if I knew those women were also married and not trying to like get with my husband. So
Mhm.
I understand where the person is coming from. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of the way in which the scenario was described gives me gives me pause.
Yeah, and I think it brings up another interesting topic about boundaries,
Mhm.
which is there's there is setting boundaries, and then there's weaponizing boundaries in order to control another person.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
don't know if you remember this, but like a couple of years ago, there was text messages that were published from
Mhm.
Jonah Hill and his relationship
Oh yeah, I
with this
remember
other
that.
woman.
Yeah.
And
That's my boundary. Yeah,
yeah,
I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, he was listing off things that he didn't like that she was doing that had
Right.
absolutely nothing to do with him.
Nothing to do with him. Right. Nothing.
And then saying that, well, this is my boundary.
Yeah.
And so I think in situations like that, there's an element of weaponizing therapy terms or therapy speak
Yeah.
in order
Yeah.
to manipulate or control another person. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what this listener is
Right.
doing, but I think there is setting boundary, which is telling someone that they are uncomfortable with the way that another person is interacting with them personally,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that then that's a setting a boundary, but then it's something totally different of saying I'm not okay with something that you do that has absolutely nothing to do with me
Mhm.
whatsoever, and
Mhm.
it's my boundary because I just don't like that you're doing this thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And you can say I'm uncomfortable when you do something like that, right?
Mhm.
That is different than a boundary that is being set, right? So I think that there needs to be a clarity around just expectations within a relationship, and then what actually is a boundary versus what is something that makes you uncomfortable, something that you just dislike.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think that concludes our listener letter, or our tea and tawakal portion
Ooh, that was some
of
tea,
the
girl.
evening. This is the portion of today's podcast where Ayesha rants. I rant. I rant at the camera about something that's bothering me today, this week, this month, maybe this year. And today it's people not knowing the unspoken rules of shopping, because
Okay.
I think this relates to today's topic about boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Because why are you in the same lane as me? Why are you so close to me when I'm shopping?
What kind of shopping are we
I
talking
don't
about?
care. It doesn't matter if I'm in TJ Maxx. I could be in the home goods area. I could be shopping in the looking through the racks of clothes. I don't understand why there is another person who I do not know this close to me. That's a boundary. Why are you this close to me?
Yeah.
There's unspoken rules of shopping. If you see that there's someone in a lane, right? Especially a tight lane, you know that you can either be at the end of that lane while the person is finished perusing, or you can go into a different lane and then circle back, right? But what you should not be doing is going directly next to that person and then perusing next to that person, because I thought we learned this from COVID. You don't need to be that close to me. 6 feet, get away from me. Why are you this close to me? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And if I am in that area, that means I have laid claim to the things in that area until I've moved on, right? I want to be able to see the things. I want the things to talk to me and tell me what I need, right? And for me to be able to do that without the pressure of you and your hot breath next to me, okay? And I feel like that's one of the unspoken rules of shopping, is that
Yeah.
you don't just come up on another person in the lane, right?
Yeah.
With the exception of a grocery store, because like grocery stores are like, you know what you want, you're here to get specific things, right? But if you're in a place like TJ Maxx, Home Goods, Marshalls, the Burlington Coat Factory, and we're all trying to hunt for the best stuff, for the things that are speaking to us, right? Because no one's in a TJ Maxx because they desperately need something. I'm sorry, but you're not, right?
I agree.
Everybody is there to tell, the store is there to tell them what they need. And then you pick it up, you put it in your cart, and you keep it moving, right? There's no reason for you to be this close to me.
So I
Yeah.
totally agree with you.
Right.
But I think what's happening, because admittedly it's happened to me before too,
Right.
is you get so distracted, like you're engrossed
Mhm.
in what you're seeing,
Right.
that you just forget that time and space exists around you. Like I will get so zoned in to looking at things,
Right.
looking at the size, looking at the price, looking at the products, the quality, that
Right.
I just like forget what's happening around me.
I mean,
Think that's what's happening.
I understand that, but it gets to a certain point, right? Where like you're doing that and you're having your little moment with the item or whatever. And you're like, you might be like moseying down, and then you realize, oh, there's another person. I'm just gonna wait over here until they're finished, and
Yeah.
then I'll be nice. And then when they scooch on by, I'll go closer to the item that I was looking at or that caught my eye. I'm talking about the people who knowingly lock eyes with you and say, I'm coming right next to you. Because that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any
I
sense.
get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had situations where, like, yeah, you're at the rack, the
Yeah.
shopping rack, and someone's coming, like, shoulder to shoulder to me, looking at
Right.
the item right next to the
Right.
item that I'm looking at, and I'm like, "Oh, whoa,
Right?
that is too close."
Right? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense. Are there any unspoken shopping rules that you go by?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I
Like,
think generally avoid the crowded areas, come back, like you said, circle back.
right, circle back.
For sure. I think let's keep it traffic flowing.
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
just like we do in driving in America,
Right.
you're going
Yeah.
like,
We're all
what like the traffic is flowing on one side, the traffic is flowing on the other side. Like,
yeah.
how do I demonstrate that?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I
Yes.
mean? You
Yes.
know
The
what I
arrows.
mean?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
the
understand
arrows.
what you're
Okay.
saying.
Like that is for sure a big one.
Speaking of being spatially aware, right? There's no reason why you should be having your shopping cart stopped in the middle of an aisle in
Oh,
any
the big one.
scenario. And
Yeah.
I cannot stand when people just leave their shopping cart in the middle. Like, you pull it to the side, you pull it somewhere where people can kind of go around and, shimmy around. You should not be leaving your shopping cart in the middle of the aisle. There's no reason for it. That just shows that you don't care about anyone. And I don't get it. I don't get it that these are tight aisles. We don't want to be like shoulder to shoulder. This is not Salat. We don't need to do that, okay?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Other unspoken rules of shopping.
I think you hit a lot of them. You know what bothers me?
What?
I have to remind myself they're just kids, but sometimes you're in a changing room
Yeah.
and a kid is looking under the door.
What?
The changing room,
Oh, come get your kid. Come get your kid.
right?
Hell no.
Serious? I
No.
think that happens in bathrooms a lot when there's like kids running around.
This is why I don't use
That's
public
never happened.
restrooms. This is why. See, like,
That's
if
never
I
happened to you before.
yeah, no.
When they were like, look, look
I feel
under
like
the stall.
if your kid does that, I have permission to scare them. And you can't do anything about it. They're here looking at all my bits, my nooks and crannies. Okay? Woo! That'll teach you. That's what I'm doing. Yeah? Like, I feel like we need to bring back communal raising, and
Takes a village.
it takes a village. Exactly. Exactly. I'm going to scare your kid if they come and they peek under my because what are you doing? Have some decorum. And like, the thing is that the parents know that the kid is doing that because I don't care how old the kid is, because you see the kid crawling under, right? There's no way that you don't see that. So you know what your child is doing. Therefore, I have your consent to scare them, and I will. And I
You
will.
heard it here first, people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god, my
I-
stomach hurts.
I will do it. I will do it because I feel like people don't have enough shame or fear, and I'm here to give it to you, right?
Yeah.
So those are the unspoken rules of shopping.
Yeah, love it.
All right. So thank you guys for listening to this episode of Girl Pray on It.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Don't forget to subscribe and comment.
Yes. Yeah, get those comments in.
Yeah. Send those questions.
Send those questions.
We want.
But be prepared that you might not like the answer.
She's just saying that because I'm mean, but I don't care. You need to listen. Like, some people just need to just hear the truth.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if you're writing in a question, then you have to expect you might not like the answer.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
She'll be nice, but I won't be.
Yeah. Well, especially if you are of the male persuasion.
I mean, if a man is writing in, like, I'm not siding with you, likely. Even if you're right, maybe. I don't like men. I thought
No,
that was
you
clear.
were like a little bit on that guy's side.
I was, but like, don't make me have to be on a man's side. Like, that's gross. Don't make me do that, okay? I think that's it.
All right.
All right.
Well, as usual, girl,
Girl, pray on it.
Bye.
We're going to get that down. Okay, bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Girl Pray on It podcast. We hope today's conversation gave you something to reflect on. Be sure to follow us on both Instagram and TikTok at Girl Pray on It Pod, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Girl Pray on It Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen, so you'll always be up to date with our newest episodes. Stay connected, stay encouraged, and as always, Girl Pray on It.